The moment I found the projector in our attic, something cold slithered up my spine. An antique Bell & Howell, dusty but intact, sitting beside a stack of unlabeled film reels. The basement renovation could wait. Some forgotten instinct warned me to leave it all untouched, but curiosity has always been my weakness. I should have listened to that primitive fear. The projector's mechanical purr filled our living room as Lisa dimmed the lights. We had moved into the Whitaker property just 3 weeks ago, charmed by its isolated location and century-old oak trees. The previous owner had died suddenly, leaving everything behind. His relatives sold the place as is, seemingly eager to be rid of it. The vintage projector and films were unexpected bonuses, conversation pieces for dinner parties I had thought. The first images flickered across our white wall, grainy black and white footage of landscapes I didn't recognize. Nothing remarkable. The second reel showed downtown scenes from what appeared to be the 1940s, judging by the automobiles and clothing styles. Quaint, historical footage. Then came the third reel. My mouth went dry as the images materialized on our wall. A panning shot of our property, unmistakable with its distinctive driveway curve and the massive oak at the property's edge. But something was wrong. Where our house stood, there was only a foundation being laid. Construction workers moved in jerky, accelerated motions, the film clearly spliced to show the building process. Lisa's hand found mine in the darkness, her grip tightening as we watched our home being built, frame by frame, brick by brick, decades before either of us was born. "This house was built in 1952, I whispered, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Who filmed this?" The footage continued, showing our home in various seasons. Empty, uninhabited, the grass growing wild, then cut back, then growing again. Years compressed into minutes. Then I noticed them.
At first, just flickers at the edge of the frame, what might have been film degradation or shadow play. But as the footage progressed, they became more distinct. Silhouettes moving across our yard, human-shaped but featureless, like cardboard cutouts gliding over the grass. They circled the house, sometimes pressing against windows, sometimes standing motionless for uncomfortably long stretches. My heartbeat thudded in my ears as the camera slowly panned up to what is now our bedroom window. A faceless shadow stood there, looking outward, looking at the camera, looking at us. When the screen went black, neither of us moved to turn on the lights. The projector clicked emptily, the reel's end flapping rhythmically. I became acutely aware of our own windows, large, uncurtained expanses of darkness looking in on us. Lisa suggested it was likely some art project by the previous owner, though her voice trembled with forced rationality. I nodded agreement, desperate to believe her explanation, though it didn't account for footage apparently filmed decades before the owner's birth. That's when the first knock came. 3 sharp raps against our living room window. I nearly jumped out of my skin, a cold sweat instantly soaking through my shirt. Lisa let out a strangled gasp. We froze, staring at the black rectangle of glass. Nothing visible, just our own reflections, pale and wide-eyed. I forced myself to check outside, my legs wooden as I approached the window. The beam of my flashlight revealed nothing but our empty yard, the oak trees swaying gently in the breeze. No footprints in the soft earth beneath the window. No evidence anyone had been there. We agreed it must have been a branch hitting the glass, or perhaps an animal. We didn't discuss the other possibility, that what knocked wasn't outside at all, but rather trapped in the dark pane itself, like an image frozen in celluloid. Sleep proved impossible. I lay awake beside Lisa, listening to her breathing gradually deepen while I stared at the ceiling. Every house-settling noise, every whisper of wind became ominous. My mind kept returning to those faceless figures, their patient circling, Their silent vigil. The mechanical click whir from downstairs ripped through the silence around 3 a.m. My entire body went rigid. The projector, running by itself. Lisa stirred beside me but didn't wake. My mouth had gone desert dry, and my heart hammered against my ribs as I slipped out of bed. Each step down the stairs felt like descending into a tomb. The living room was bathed in the flickering gray-blue light of the projected images. It was the same footage. Our house, the empty yard. But something had changed. The camera angle was different. It was filming from inside the house now, from our living room, from exactly where the projector now stood. My legs nearly gave out as I realized I was watching footage filmed from this exact spot, decades ago, as if something had stood here, patiently recording, waiting. The faceless shadows appeared again, but now they approached the house, approached the windows, looking in. No, looking out. The truth hit me with nauseating clarity. Those weren't shadows looking in. They were reflections. My reflection. Lisa's reflection. The people who would someday live here, cast backward through time, imprinted on the film like photographic negatives awaiting development. As I watched, paralyzed, one shadow separated from the others. It grew larger, approaching the camera, approaching me. The silhouette extended what might have been a hand, reaching forward until it filled the frame with darkness. The projector clicked off. In the sudden darkness, I felt it before I saw it, a presence standing inches from me. The temperature plummeted. My breath clouded in front of my face. I heard 3 sharp raps, but not from the window this time. They came from inside my skull, as if something were knocking to be let out. I still live in this house. Lisa does too, though she doesn't speak much anymore. Not since that night. The projector sits in our attic once more, but the reels are gone. I've searched everywhere. Sometimes at night, I catch glimpses of shadows moving across our yard from the corner of my eye. When I turn to look directly, they're gone. But I know they're there, watching, waiting. Shadows trapped in an endless reel, performing the same actions across decades. And sometimes, in the darkest hours, I fear we're trapped in their film, our movements dictated by frames that were exposed long before we arrived. Every night, I pray the film runs out before we do.
The old Ridgeway Tunnel has always been there, a gaping wound in the hillside just beyond the edge of town. During the day, it's nothing special, just an abandoned railway passage, its entrance partially collapsed and adorned with graffiti. But after dark, when shadows crawl and stretch across its mouth like hungry fingers, it becomes something else entirely. The local teenagers had turned crossing it after midnight into a rite of passage. I remember their hushed voices at the bar where I worked, their eyes gleaming with the particular excitement that comes from dancing along the edges of fear. I was 32, far too old for such games, but something about their challenge wormed its way under my skin. Perhaps it was the monotony of my life that drove me there that night. Or maybe it was something darker, something that had been waiting for me all along. The entrance loomed before me, a black hole against the midnight sky. The air felt heavy, electric with a coming storm. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam seeming feeble against the absolute darkness ahead. 10 minutes, I told myself. 10 minutes to walk straight through and back to my car. I stepped forward, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots abnormally loud in the stillness. The temperature dropped immediately. My breath clouded before me as the walls closed in, pressing against my shoulders like unwelcome hands. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, each drop echoing like a clock counting down to something I couldn't name. I focused on moving forward, one foot before the other, fighting the instinct to run back to the safety of moonlight. That's when I heard them, Footsteps. Soft at first, barely audible beneath the sound of dripping water, but growing clearer, more distinct with each passing second, following me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I quickened my pace. The footsteps matched mine, accelerating in perfect sync. Cold sweat trickled down my spine despite the chill.
I spun around, flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness, illuminating nothing but empty tunnels stretching behind me. Then, for just an instant, at the far end where the tunnel mouth framed a slice of night sky, a flash of white, brilliant, searing white that disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving purple afterimages dancing across my vision. I ran. The rational part of my mind shut down completely as animal fear took over. I didn't stop until I had reached my car, fumbling with trembling hands to unlock the door, my lungs burning and my legs weak. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of light, an overactive imagination fueled by those teenagers' stories. I was wrong. The first sign came 3 days later. I woke to the sound of my dog growling at the back door. When I opened it, there was nothing there, just the early morning mist hanging over my small yard. But as I turned to go back inside, I noticed them. Footprints, not shoe prints, but bare feet, pressed into the dew-damp grass. They led from the edge of the woods directly to my door, yet there were none leading away. I convinced myself it was neighborhood kids playing pranks. I installed a motion-activated light above my back door and tried to forget about it. A week passed before I noticed the wet footprints on my kitchen floor one morning. Small puddles in the shape of bare feet, as if someone had walked in from the rain. Except there had been no rain that night, and my doors had been locked. My dog refused to enter the kitchen, standing at the threshold whining softly, his eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Sleep became elusive after that. I would lie awake, ears straining at the faintest sounds, the house settling, the wind against the windows, or something else moving through the rooms when all should have been still. During the day, I caught glimpses of movement at the corner of my vision, flashes of white that disappeared when I turned to look. The distinct sensation of being watched pressed down on me like a physical weight. My colleagues commented on my appearance, asking if I was ill. I couldn't explain that each night the footprints appeared closer to my bedroom, that I'd begun to hear breathing sometimes, soft and wet, just on the other side of my bedroom door, that my dog now spent his nights whimpering beneath my bed, refusing to leave my side. I researched the tunnel's history, finding old newspaper articles about disappearances over the decades, young men and women who had ventured in on dares and were never seen again. Local folklore spoke of something that lived in the darkness between worlds, something that followed those who disturbed its domain. The night it finally entered my room, I was prepared, or so I thought. Salt lines across the threshold, religious symbols from half a dozen faiths hanging from my walls, lights blazing to banish every shadow. None of it mattered. The doorknob turned slowly, though I'd locked it. My dog crawled deeper under the bed as the temperature plummeted. The footprints appeared one by one on my carpet, dark and glistening, moving toward my bed with deliberate slowness. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as terrible pressure built in the room. The air shimmered before me, and for just a moment, I saw it fully, pale and elongated, with too many joints and hollow spaces where features should be. Its skin rippled like water disturbed by a stone. It leaned close, and I felt its breath against my face, cold and ancient, carrying the scent of deep earth and stagnant water. My vision swam with white light as it whispered words, in a language I somehow understood despite never having heard it before. It told me I was marked now, that a piece of it would always be with me, behind my eyes, beneath my skin, that others would see it in me and know. It told me I would return to the tunnel, again and again, drawn by a compulsion I wouldn't be able to resist, that someday I would bring others. When morning came, I found myself standing at my back door, staring out at the yard. There were footprints in the grass again, but this time they led from my door to the edge of the woods. My own bare feet were wet and mud-stained. I've sealed up my house since then. Boarded windows, new locks, cameras monitoring every approach. But it doesn't matter. The footprints appear inside now, forming before my eyes. Sometimes at night, I catch my reflection in the mirror and see a flash of white behind my irises. The teenagers still dare each other to cross the tunnel after midnight. I've taken to parking nearby, intercepting them, warning them away with a desperation that makes them hurry off, casting worried glances over their shoulders. They think I'm just some crazy man. They don't realize I'm trying to save them. But part of me, a growing part that I fight against daily, is hoping that someday one of them won't listen, that they'll go into the tunnel anyway, and then perhaps I'll finally be free.
The necklace sat on my bedside table, its emerald-like stone catching what little moonlight filtered through my curtains. 3 nights since Aunt Eleanor's lawyer had placed it in my palm, and 3 nights of the same dream. The stone seemed to pulse in the darkness, a rhythmic glow that matched my quickening heartbeat. Something about it felt wrong, like it was listening, waiting. The air in my bedroom had grown thick and suffocating since its arrival, as if the walls themselves had inched closer. I never knew Aunt Eleanor well, a reclusive woman who'd spent her final decades in that massive Victorian house upstate. She'd been more myth than family member. The inheritance surprised everyone, especially me. Just a necklace, antique silver with an unusual green stone that wasn't quite emerald, wasn't quite jade, and a note explaining it had been in the family for generations. The lawyer mentioned she'd been insistent I receive it. Only me. That first night, I dreamt of her. Not the frail, withered woman from the single funeral I'd attended 10 years ago, but younger, her eyes wide with urgency. She stood in what I recognized as her old parlor, beckoning to me frantically. When she spoke, her voice echoed as if coming from the bottom of a well. "James, you must find the other half. It's not complete. Find the other piece of the stone." I woke drenched in sweat, my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The second night, the same. The third, worse. She grabbed my wrists, her touch ice cold, her nails digging into my skin as she pulled me closer, repeating those words with increasing desperation. I jolted awake, to find angry red marks on my wrists, as if someone had gripped them with impossible strength. After the third night, I considered throwing the necklace away. The moment the thought formed in my mind, the lights in my apartment flickered violently. The bulb in my reading lamp exploded, sending glass shards across my desk. My mouth went dry, and I felt something watching me from the corners of the room. That's when I began researching. Old family records, photos, emails to distant relatives. Most ignored me. Those who responded knew nothing of significance. Finally, my mother's cousin mentioned something about Eleanor having a sister, Rebecca, who died young. There had been some scandal, something no one discussed. The local historical society had a photograph. 2 young women, Eleanor and Rebecca, at some garden party in 1952. Each wore an identical necklace, save for the stones, Eleanor's green, Rebecca's deep blue. The archivist noted that Rebecca had died under unusual circumstances shortly after the photo was taken. No one knew what had happened to her possessions. That night, the dream changed. I was no longer in the parlor, but in a basement I didn't recognize. Eleanor pointed to a wall, behind which I somehow knew Rebecca was buried. Not dead, buried. I could hear faint scratching, growing more frantic, more desperate. I woke screaming, my fingernails torn and bleeding, as if I'd been clawing at something solid. The next morning, I called in sick. The skin around my neck where the necklace had rested while I slept felt burnt, raw. I avoided touching the stone directly, but couldn't bring myself to put it away. My research intensified. Property records showed Eleanor had purchased her house from Rebecca's widower in 1953, just months after her sister's accident. I drove to the house, now owned by some investment banker who'd renovated it extensively. I sat in my car across the street, staring at its imposing facade, when my phone rang. The screen showed no number, just static. When I answered, I heard only a woman's voice, distant and distorted. The basement wall, northeast corner. She's waiting. The call disconnected. The car's electronics went haywire, lights flashing, radio scanning rapidly through stations, wipers sweeping frantically across the dry windshield. I don't know what compelled me to knock on the door. Some mix of terror and resignation. My palms sweated as I explained to the confused homeowner that I was Eleanor's nephew, researching family history, mentioned the basement. He hesitated, then revealed they'd sealed off part of the old basement during renovations after finding structural issues. Something about the foundation in the northeast corner being unstable. My heart hammered against my ribs as he reluctantly led me down. The renovated portion was modern, bright, but I could see where they'd put up a new wall. Standing near it, I felt the stone on my chest grow hot. The lights flickered. The homeowner nervously mentioned electrical problems they'd never been able to fix. I pressed my hand against the wall, and the sensation that shot through me dropped me to my knees. A vision flooded my mind. Rebecca, Eleanor's sister, her face contorted in betrayal. Eleanor slipping the blue-stoned necklace from her sister's neck as Rebecca's eyes glazed over. The stones, once unified, now separated, one buried with its owner, one passed down, searching for its counterpart. The homeowner helped me to my feet, concerned by my sudden collapse. I mumbled apologies, fabricated an excuse, and fled. That night, I didn't dream of Eleanor. Instead, I felt Rebecca's presence, not malevolent but mournful. The necklace didn't burn but cooled against my skin. I knew what I had to do. Not destroy the stone, not flee from it, but return it to its other half. Complete what had been broken. The next morning, I consulted a lawyer of my own, then approached the homeowner with an offer to fund historical restoration of the original basement. 3 weeks later, workers uncovered a small alcove in the northeast corner. Inside was a simple wooden box containing a silver necklace with a blue stone. As I placed the two necklaces side by side, a profound sense of peace washed over me. The stones seemed to sigh, their colors swirling together like long-separated lovers reunited. I've kept both necklaces now. They rest in a special case in my home. The dreams have stopped. The lights no longer flicker. But sometimes, in the space between wakefulness and sleep, I hear a whispered, "Thank you." And I wonder what terrible vigil I narrowly escaped by bringing together what should never have been apart.